The emergency lights flashed red across the council chamber. Ambassador Jake sat in the human delegation seat and watched the chaos unfold before him. Representatives from 43 different species filled the massive hall, and every single one of them looked terrified. Director stood at the center platform. His silver skin had turned pale, almost white. The leader raised his forearms to call for silence, but the shouting continued. Species that had been allies for centuries now screamed at each other, blaming one another for the disasters that kept coming. "The outer rim has fallen," General announced. The military commander projected a holographic map above the chamber floor. Red markers spread across the display like a disease. 74 colony worlds lost in the past month alone. The swarm has broken through every defensive line we established. Jake leaned forward in his seat. He had reviewed the battle reports during the flight to the council station. The numbers were worse than anyone publicly admitted. Entire fleets had engaged and simply vanished. No survivors, no wreckage, just empty space where thousands of ships had been. "What about the battle cruisers?" someone called out. "They were supposed to hold the system." General shook his head. "They detected them 3 days before they arrived. When our forces reached, the enemy was waiting. They destroyed all 47 ships in under 2 hours. The chamber erupted again. Ambassador of the Commonwealth slammed his fists on his desk. "This is impossible. Our sensor technology is the most advanced in known space. How do they always know where we are?" "Because their network is better than ours," replied. His voice was flat, defeated. "Every vessel connects to their hive mind. They share information instantly across entire sectors. When one ship detects something, they all know about it within seconds. We cannot hide from them. We cannot surprise them. We cannot outmaneuver them." Jake watched the other ambassadors. Some were angry. Others looked broken. The Confederated systems had existed for over 2,000 years. These species had faced threats before, conquered enemies, survived wars that lasted centuries. But nothing had ever pushed them to the edge like this. Director called for order again. This time the chamber quieted. "We need solutions," he said. "Not blame, not excuses, solutions. Does anyone have anything to offer?" Silence fell over the room. Jake could hear the hum of the station's life support systems through the walls. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. "Our weapons are useless," Admiral of the Defense Fleet finally said. She was a tall woman from the race, known across the galaxy for her tactical brilliance. "We have used plasma cannons, kinetic accelerators, fusion bombs, viral weapons. They adapt to everything within days, sometimes hours. Whatever we throw at them, they find a counter." "What about the quantum disruptors?" another voice asked. "Ineffective," answered. "We deployed them at the Battle of Helicon Prime. They adjusted their ship hulls to disperse the quantum frequency. Our most powerful weapons just bounced off them." Jake felt his communicator vibrate against his wrist. A message from Earth, from Admiral Kate. He glanced down at the screen and read the single line of text. His breath caught in his throat. "Maybe we are thinking about this wrong," Jake said. His voice cut through the silence. Every head in the chamber turned toward him. Director looked surprised. "Ambassador, do the humans have something to contribute?" Several ambassadors laughed. It was not a kind sound. The representative stood up. "With respect, Director, the humans have been part of this council for only 30 years. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly offer?" Jake stood slowly. He had expected this reaction. Humanity was the youngest species in the Confederated systems. Earth's ships were slower than everyone else's. Human weapons were weaker. Human shields failed faster. Every other race in the galaxy had looked down on humanity since first contact. "You are right," Jake said calmly. "We cannot match your technology. Our ships are primitive compared to yours. Our weapons are basic. Our sensors are limited." He paused. "But maybe that is exactly why we can help." General crossed his arms. "Explain." "They detect everything," Jake continued. "Every ship you send, they see it coming. Every fleet movement, every supply run, every scout mission. Your sensors are so advanced that you leave energy signatures across half a sector. Your engines are so powerful that they create gravitational ripples. Your communication systems broadcast on frequencies that light up their detection grids like fireworks." "And humans do not?" Ambassador asked mockingly. "Not with what we have been building," Jake answered. The chamber went quiet again. Director leaned forward. "What have you been building?" Jake took a breath. This was the moment. Once he said it, there was no going back. For 20 years, Earth's military has been working on a ship, not a faster ship, not a more powerful ship, a ship that cannot be detected. Admiral frowned. That is impossible. Every propulsion system creates some form of emission. Every power source generates heat. Every life support system produces waste energy. There is no way to mask all of those signatures simultaneously. You are right, Jake said. You cannot mask them, so we eliminated them. Eliminated them? General stepped closer. What does that mean? The ship we built uses a quantum displacement drive. No conventional engines, no fuel exhaust, no radiation. The hull absorbs all electromagnetic frequencies. The life support runs on closed biological loops that release no heat. Even the crew's life signs are suppressed to near zero during operations. The representative laughed harder. You expect us to believe humans created something that our scientists never imagined. That is absurd. We did not imagine it, Jake replied. We it. That got everyone's attention. Director stood. From whom? From nature, Jake said. Earth has creatures that hunt using complete silence, predators that cannot be detected by their prey until it is too late. We studied how they move, how they hide, how they strike without warning. Then we built a ship around those principles. Even if such a ship exists, Admiral said slowly, what good is one vessel that have millions of ships? You would need an entire fleet. We only need one ship if it is in the right place, Jake answered. The swarm operates through a central nexus. We have tracked it. Every vessel connects back to that hub. It coordinates their movements, shares their sensor data, links their consciousness. Destroy the nexus and you break the swarm. General shook his head. The nexus is protected by 10,000 ships. You would never get close enough to fire a weapon. Not if they can see you coming, Jake agreed. But what if they could not? What if a ship could slip through their entire fleet without being detected? What if it could position itself right next to the nexus and strike before anyone knew it was there? The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Director spoke. You are saying humanity has built a ghost ship? Yes, Jake said simply. And you believe this ghost ship can end the war? Jake looked at the holographic map still floating above the chamber floor. The red markers representing controlled space covered nearly a third of known civilization. Billions of lives had been lost, hundreds of worlds destroyed. The greatest military alliance in galactic history was being crushed by an enemy they could not stop. I believe it is the only chance we have left, Jake said. Director stared at him for what felt like forever. Then the leader nodded once. Contact Yo Admiral Kate stood in the observation deck and stared through the reinforced glass at the ship below. The construction bay stretched out for nearly 2 kilometers, carved deep into the lunar surface. Work lights illuminated the vessel that floated in the center of the massive chamber, held in place by magnetic clamps. The ECS Phantom looked wrong. That was the first thing anyone noticed about it. Where other Earth ships gleamed with polished metal and proud insignias, the Phantom's hull seemed to absorb the light around it. The surface was flat black, broken only by irregular patterns that made it hard to focus on. Even knowing exactly where the ship was, sometimes lost track of its outline against the darkness of the bay. Admiral, the crew is assembled, a voice said behind her. Turned to see Captain Ben Carter walking across the deck. He was younger than most ship commanders, only 38, but he had spent the last decade training for this specific mission. Carter moved with the careful precision of someone who understood that mistakes were not an option. How are they holding up? Asked. Scared, Carter admitted, but ready. They all volunteered knowing the risks. And you, are you ready? Carter looked past her at the Phantom. I have studied every system on that ship 1,000 times. I know how the quantum drive works, how the hull materials function, how the life support cycles operate. I know it all in theory. He paused. But we have never tested it in real combat conditions. We are about to take that ship into enemy space with no backup, no support, and no way to call for help if something goes wrong. That is not what I asked, said quietly. Carter met her eyes. Yes, Admiral, I am ready. Nodded. Good, let me meet your crew. They walked together through the connecting corridor into the Phantom's main briefing room. 46 men and women stood at attention when entered. She recognized several faces. Commander Lisa Park, the executive officer, had been teaching advanced tactics at the Naval Academy before volunteering. Engineer Chris Hayes had designed half the systems on the Phantom. Lieutenant Amy had scored higher on sensor interpretation than anyone in Earth fleet history. At ease, said. The crew relaxed slightly but could see the tension in their shoulders. I am going to be honest with you. What we are asking you to do should be impossible. Every military expert in the Confederated system says it cannot be done. They say one ship cannot slip through an enemy fleet undetected. They say you cannot get close enough to the Nexus to matter. They say even if you somehow managed all of that, you would never survive the weapon deployment. She paused and looked at each person in the room. They are probably right. The odds of success are very low. The odds of survival are even lower. Some of you will not come home from this mission. Maybe all of you. That is the reality. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away. But here is what I believe, continued. I believe the galaxy has spent so long being advanced and powerful that they forgot how to be clever. They built bigger guns and faster ships and stronger shields. They focused so much on being the best that they stopped thinking about being different. She gestured toward the Phantom Systems display on the wall. This ship is not the most advanced vessel ever built, but it is the most unusual. 20 years ago, when the Council first warned us about the threat, I asked our scientists a simple question. In nature, how does a weaker predator survive against a stronger one? By hiding, Lieutenant Amy said. Exactly, agreed. On Earth, we have creatures that hunt prey much larger than themselves. They succeed because they cannot be detected until it is too late. Snakes that sense only heat, sharks that track electrical fields, bats that navigate by sound, each one invisible to its prey's primary senses. Engineer Chris Hayes stepped forward. That is the principle behind the Phantom. We identified every way to detect ships, then we eliminated each signature one by one. Gestured for Hayes to continue. Standard engines create thermal exhaust, radiation signatures, and gravitational distortions, Hayes explained. The Phantom's quantum displacement drive works differently. Instead of pushing through space, it shifts the ship's position at the quantum level. No fuel burn, no radiation, no detectable propulsion signature. What about power generation? Someone asked. The ship has no reactor, Hayes answered. We use a zero-point energy extractor that pulls power from vacuum fluctuations. The energy draw is so small that it registers as background noise. And the hull itself is made from metamaterials developed in our deep-sea research programs. It absorbs everything: radar, LiDAR, thermal imaging, quantum scanning. Light hits the surface and just disappears. Commander Park pulled up another schematic. Life support was the biggest challenge. Most systems release heat, produce waste, emit sounds. We based our solution on closed-loop biological systems. Genetically modified bacteria process our air. Thermal energy gets stored in crystalline matrices throughout the hull instead of being vented. Even waste products are broken down and recycled at the molecular level. And the crew, Captain Carter asked. During stealth operations, you will enter a meditative state that lowers your body temperature and reduces your biosignatures to near zero, Park explained. We trained for months to perfect the technique. It is uncomfortable but effective. The sensors are designed to detect active ship systems and life forms operating at normal levels. You will register as background radiation. Watch the crew absorb this information. She saw concern on some faces, but also determination. These people understood they were attempting something that had never been done before. What about weapons? A voice called from the back. Lieutenant Jake, the communications officer. Hayes pulled up one more display. This one showed a device that looked more like a scientific instrument than a weapon. We cannot carry traditional armaments. Missiles, plasma cannons, kinetic weapons, they all create massive energy signatures when fired. Instead, we develop something based on theoretical physics. The gravitational collapse initiator, Carter said. Correct, Hayes confirmed. The device creates a localized singularity, essentially a micro black hole, but it requires us to be within 500 meters of the target. The weapon needs 3 minutes to charge, and we need to remain completely stationary during that time. 500 meters, someone whispered. That is inside their shield perimeter. That is the point, said. Every other race in the galaxy is trying to destroy them from a distance. You are going to do it from point-blank range. They will never expect it because nobody has ever been crazy enough to try it. Carter stepped forward. I will not lie to you. This mission is dangerous beyond anything Earth fleet has ever attempted. We are going to fly through the largest concentration of enemy ships in known space. We will have no weapons to defend ourselves. If our stealth systems fail for even a second, we will be destroyed before we can react." He let that sink in. "But if we succeed, we end this war. The swarm has killed billions. They have destroyed hundreds of worlds. Every day we wait, more people die. The Council's fleets cannot stop them. Their technology cannot stop them. But maybe, just maybe, we can." "We launch in 6 hours, announced. "Use that time to prepare, check your equipment, review your training, contact your families if you want. But understand that once you board the Phantom, you will be on total communication silence. No transmissions in or out. The galaxy will not know where you are or what you are doing." The crew nodded, could see the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. "Dismissed," Carter said. The crew filed out slowly, and Carter remained in the briefing room, alone with the schematics and mission plans floating on the displays around them. "Do you think they understand?" Carter asked quietly. "They understand the mission," replied. "Whether they truly understand what it means to be completely alone in enemy space, with no help coming, that they will only learn when they are out there." Carter looked at the Phantom's profile on the screen. "I keep thinking about the name. Phantom, a ghost, something that does not really exist. That is what we need to become out there, not a ship, not people, just shadows moving through the dark." Placed a hand on his shoulder. "The Council thinks we are desperate. They think we are offering this mission because we have nothing else to contribute. They do not understand that humanity has always survived by being underestimated. And if we fail, then the galaxy will keep fighting the way they have been, with fleets and weapons and tactics that do not work, and eventually they will lose." Met his eyes. "But if you succeed, you will prove something important, that being clever is sometimes better than being powerful, that thinking differently is sometimes better than thinking bigger." Carter saluted. "We will do our best, Admiral." The Phantom moved through the outer rim like a whisper through a graveyard. Captain Ben Carter sat in the command chair and watched the sensor displays that showed what the rest of the galaxy could not see. Ships surrounded them in every direction, massive hive vessels that stretched for kilometers, smaller attack craft that swarmed between the larger ships like insects. "Distance to nearest hostile?" Carter asked quietly. On the Phantom, even normal conversation was kept to a minimum. Every sound, every vibration could potentially compromise their stealth systems. 3.2 kilometers off the port side," Lieutenant Amy answered from the sensor station. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Looks like a scout class. It passed within 500 meters 40 minutes ago and showed no awareness of our presence." Commander Lisa Park checked her tactical board. "We have counted over 2,000 vessels in this sector alone. The concentration increases as we move deeper into their territory." Carter nodded. They had been in enemy space for 6 days now. 6 days of absolute silence, of moving at speeds slow enough to avoid creating even the smallest quantum ripple in space-time. 6 days of watching them destroy everything in their path. Navigator Torres adjusted their course slightly. His hands moved across the controls without making a sound. The quantum displacement drive engaged so smoothly that Carter could not feel any change. One moment they were in one position, the next they were 7 kilometers closer to their destination. No acceleration, no engine burn, just an instantaneous shift that left no trace in normal space. "New contact," said suddenly. "Formation ahead looks like a harvesting operation." Carter leaned forward. The main showed a planet in the distance. From this range it looked peaceful, a blue and green world that reminded him of Earth. But as the Phantom moved closer, the truth became visible. The hive ships were positioned in orbit, extending massive organic appendages down to the surface. Even from space, Carter could see the planet changing. Green areas turned brown. Blue oceans became gray. The atmosphere itself seemed to thin and fade. "They are stripping it," Park said. Her voice was cold with anger. "Taking everything, the water, the minerals, the organic material, everything." Carter checked the planetary database. 7. Population of 4 billion according to Council records, mostly colonists with some smaller settlements from other species. Word, Torres corrected quietly, past tense. The Phantom drifted past the dying world. Carter forced himself to watch. The crew needed to see what they were fighting against. They were not just an enemy. They were an extinction event, a force that consumed everything and left nothing behind. "I count 3 refugee ships trying to escape," reported. Small transports, probably carrying a few thousand civilians each. Carter watched the sensor displays. The refugee ships were moving away from the planet as fast as their engines could manage, but attack craft were already pursuing them. The chase was short and brutal. Within minutes, the refugee ships were destroyed. No warning shots, no chance to surrender, just quick, efficient destruction. "Keep us on course," Carter said. He forced his voice to remain steady. "We cannot help them. Our mission is the only thing that matters." He saw Park's jaw tighten, but she nodded. Every member of the crew understood the terrible mathematics of their situation. They could not save the people dying around them. They could only try to stop them from killing billions more. The Phantom continued deeper into space. They passed through regions that had been thriving civilizations only weeks ago. Now they were graveyards. Dead stations orbited dead worlds. Debris fields marked where fleets had made their last stand. Sometimes the Phantom's sensors picked up faint distress signals from more damaged ships, but they could not stop, could not help, could not even acknowledge that they heard the calls for rescue. "I am picking up something unusual," said on the 8th day. "Heavy concentration of quantum communications ahead, much denser than normal traffic." Carter checked the readings. "What do you make of it?" "It matches the signal patterns we associated with the Nexus," replied. "But the strength is much higher than predicted. The Nexus is not just coordinating the fleet. It is actively processing data from every ship simultaneously. The bandwidth is incredible." Engineer Chris Hayes moved to station. He studied the readings for several minutes. "This is more sophisticated than we thought. The Nexus is not just a command ship. It is a living supercomputer. Every vessel feeds it information. Every sensor reading, every tactical observation, every encounter. The Nexus processes all of that data and sends back instructions." "Can we still destroy it?" Carter asked. Hayes nodded slowly. "The gravitational collapse initiator will work, but severing that many neural connections at once, it is going to cause massive feedback through the entire swarm. Any ship connected to the Nexus when it collapses will experience catastrophic system failures." "Good," Park said simply. Tours adjusted their course again. "We are approaching the coordinates for the Nexus. We should have visual confirmation within 12 hours. "Reduce speed," Carter ordered. "From this point forward, we move even slower. I want constant monitoring of every sensor pulse. If they change their scanning patterns at all, I need to know immediately." "Understood," replied. The next 12 hours were the longest of Carter's life. The Phantom crept forward at a pace that made glaciers look fast. Every few minutes, a ship would pass nearby. Sometimes they came close enough that Carter could see details on their organic hulls through the strange patterns that might have been veins or neural pathways, structures that could have been weapons or sensory organs. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way, living things that had been grown for the sole purpose of destruction. "Captain," said suddenly, "we have a problem." Carter's heart rate spiked. "Report." "Patrol approaching our position. They are using a new scanning method I have not seen before, some kind of gravimetric pulse. It is designed to detect spatial distortions." Hayes cursed under his breath. "The quantum drive creates micro-distortions when it operates. They are tiny, but if they scan close enough with the right equipment, they might register." "How long until they reach scanning range?" Carter asked. 4 minutes, answered. Carter made a decision. "Hayes, vent all thermal reserves into the emergency sinks. I want our hull temperature dropped to match cosmic background radiation." "Captain, that will drop interior temperature to near freezing," Park warned. "The crew will not be able to maintain that for long." "We only need to maintain it until the patrol passes," Carter said. "Do it." Hayes activated the emergency thermal management system. Carter felt the temperature drop immediately. Within seconds, his breath was visible in the air. Within a minute, he was shivering despite his thermal suit. He looked around the bridge. Every crew member was entering the deep meditative state they had trained for. Heart rates slowed. Body temperatures dropped. Biosignatures faded to almost nothing. The Phantom became truly ghost-like, a ship-shaped patch of nothing floating in space. No heat, no energy, no life signs above background noise levels, just a cold, dark object drifting through the void. Carter watched the sensor display through eyes that were starting to blur from the cold. The patrol was closer now. 3 ships, each one 50 times larger than the Phantom. Their scanning pulses swept through the area like searchlights cutting through fog. 2 minutes passed. The cold became painful. Carter's fingers were numb. His face hurt. He knew hypothermia was setting in, but he could not allow himself to move, could not allow his body to generate heat. The lead ship passed within 300 meters, so close that Carter could see individual details on its hull, organic ports that might have been sensor clusters, chambers that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The ship was alive in a way that human vessels never were. The scanning pulse hit them directly. For a moment, Carter was certain they had been detected. He watched the ship, waiting for it to turn to target them to fire. But the ship continued past. The scanning pulse swept on, finding nothing unusual, just another cold rock drifting through space. 5 minutes later, the patrol was gone. Haze slowly brought the temperature back to normal. Carter's hands shook as feeling returned to his fingers. Around the bridge, crew members were gasping and shivering. "That was too close," Park said through chattering teeth. "But they did not see us," Carter replied. "That is all that matters." Checked her sensors. "Captain, I have visual on the Nexus." Carter pulled up the image on the main. What he saw made him understand why the galaxy was losing this war. The Nexus was not just a ship. It was a structure that description. 20 kilometers across at its widest point, shaped like some kind of organic flower with countless petals spreading out in all directions. Each petal glowed with internal light, pulsing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Thousands of ships orbited the Nexus like planets around a star. "That is what we have to destroy," Torres said quietly. Carter stared at the massive structure. They had come so far, crossed through the heart of enemy territory, survived encounters that should have killed them, and now they faced their target, protected by an armada that could crush entire fleets. "How many ships in the defensive sphere?" Carter asked. Ran the count. At least 8,000 in close orbit, another 3,000 in outer defensive positions, and those are just the ones I can see. There are probably more on the far side. "Can we get through?" Park asked. Hayes studied the tactical plot. "Maybe. The ships are maintaining standard patrol patterns. If we time our approach correctly, we can slip between the gaps in their formation. But once we are inside the defensive sphere, we will be completely surrounded. No way out until after we fire the weapon." Carter looked at his crew. They were cold, tired, and scared, but not one of them suggested turning back. "Plot an approach vector," Carter ordered. "We will move during their next patrol rotation change. That should give us maximum confusion in their defensive formation." "Understood," Torres said. The Phantom drifted beneath the Nexus like a shadow beneath a mountain. Captain Ben Carter could see the massive structure through filling his vision with organic patterns and pulsing lights. This close, the Nexus was even more alien than he had imagined. The structure seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in slow rhythms that followed no pattern Carter could identify. "Position confirmed," Navigator Torres whispered. "We are directly beneath the primary neural cluster. Range to target is 480 meters. Engineer Chris Hayes moved to the weapons station. His hands trembled slightly as he powered up the gravitational collapse initiator. "Beginning charge sequence. Time to full power 3 minutes. Carter checked the tactical display. Ships filled the space around them, hundreds of vessels patrolling in overlapping patterns. Thousands more holding position at regular intervals. The defensive sphere was so dense that he could see at least 50 ships through at any given moment. "Sensor sweep incoming," Lieutenant Amy reported. Her voice was tense. "Routine pattern from the outer defensive ring. It will pass through our position in 40 seconds. "Hold position," Carter ordered. "Maintain stealth protocols." The Phantom hung motionless in space. The quantum displacement drive was offline. Life support ran at minimum levels. The crew barely breathed. They had trained for this moment, preparing themselves to become as close to lifeless as possible while remaining conscious. Carter felt his heartbeat slow as he entered the meditative state. His body temperature dropped. His metabolism shifted into a mode that required almost no energy. Around him, the bridge crew did the same. 47 people turned themselves into biological statues, waiting for death or victory. The sensor sweep passed over them. Carter watched the displays through eyes that barely moved. The scanning pulse touched the Phantom, analyzed it, categorized it as background noise, and moved on. Just another piece of space debris, cold and dead and uninteresting. "Clear," said after the sweep had passed. "No indication of detection." Hayes checked his console. Weapon charge at 30%, 2 minutes remaining. Commander Lisa Park monitored the communication channels. Heavy traffic from the Nexus. It is coordinating fleet movements across 4 different sectors simultaneously, thousands of ships receiving orders every second. Carter studied the neural patterns flowing through the Nexus structure. Every vessel in the galaxy was connected to this thing. Their tactics, their strategies, their ability to adapt and respond, it all came from here. Destroy this, and the swarm would lose its mind. Contact approaching, said suddenly. Heavy cruiser, bearing 270. Speed indicates normal patrol pattern, but the course will bring it within 100 meters of our position. Carter felt ice in his stomach. Time to closest approach. 90 seconds, replied. It will pass right through our position. Weapon charge, Carter asked. 60%, Hayes answered. I need 90 more seconds. The timing was impossible. The ship would reach them before the weapon was ready. If they moved, they would create a quantum signature that the Nexus would detect instantly. If they stayed, the cruiser would pass so close that even their minimal biosignatures might register on its sensors. Options, Carter asked quietly. None, Park said. Her voice was flat. If we move, we are detected. If we stay, we might be detected. The only difference is certainty. Carter made his decision. We stay. All personnel enter deep hibernation state. Hayes, can you continue the charge sequence while in hibernation? The system is automated, Hayes confirmed. Once started, it will complete on its own. Then do it, Carter ordered. Everyone goes under now. The crew entered the deepest meditative state they had trained for. Carter felt his consciousness begin to fade. His thoughts became distant and slow. His body's energy output dropped to levels barely above death. He existed in a state between awareness and oblivion, able to perceive but unable to react. He watched the cruiser approach. The ship was enormous, its hull covered in the same organic patterns that marked all vessels. Chambers glowed with internal light. Appendages extended and retracted as the ship moved. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The cruiser passed overhead, so close that Carter could see individual cells in its hull structure, pulsed through veins that carried whatever served as blood in ships. Sensor clusters tracked space around the vessel, searching for threats. Searching for the Phantom. Carter felt the scanning pulse touch his ship, felt it analyze the cold hull, the minimal heat signature, the faint of the crew. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the scan lingered. The sensors had found something, not a ship, not a threat, but an anomaly, something that did not quite fit with background readings. The cruiser slowed. Carter watched its sensor clusters rotate, focusing on their position. The ship was investigating. In seconds, it would realize that the anomaly was not natural, would understand that something was hiding in the shadow of the Nexus. Then a new signal came from the Nexus. Carter could not understand communication, but he could see the cruiser's response. The ship accelerated, turning away from the Phantom and moving to join a formation heading out system. Some new threat had appeared somewhere else, some new emergency that required immediate response. The Nexus had ordered the cruiser to abandon its investigation. The ship disappeared into the distance. Carter began pulling himself out of hibernation. Around the bridge, other crew members stirred. Hayes reached his console first, checking the weapon status. Charge at 95%, Hayes reported. We are almost there. How close was that? Torres asked. Too close, answered. She was reviewing the sensor logs. The cruiser detected an anomaly. Another 10 seconds and it would have identified us. But it did not, Carter said. Stay focused, we still have a mission to complete. Hayes counted down. Weapon at full charge in 3, 2, 1. We are ready to fire, Captain. Carter looked at the Nexus looming above them. 20 kilometers of living structure that controlled the fate of billions. The heart of the swarm, the mind behind the extinction. Fire, Carter said. Hayes activated the gravitational collapse initiator. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself began to break. A point appeared in space between the Phantom and the Nexus. A point smaller than an atom but containing more mass than a star. The gravitational field was so intense that it bent light around itself, creating a sphere of absolute blackness. The effect began slowly. The nearest petal of the Nexus structure began to stretch toward the point. Then another petal. Then another. The gravitational force increased exponentially as more mass was pulled into the collapse. What had started as a small distortion became a maelstrom. "Get us out of here," Carter ordered. "Maximum displacement now." Tors activated the quantum drive at full power. The Phantom lurched away from the Nexus, jumping 7 kilometers in an instant. Then another jump. Then another. They needed distance between themselves and what was coming. Behind them, the Nexus was dying. The gravitational collapse accelerated beyond any natural black hole formation. 20 kilometers of living structure compressed into a point smaller than a marble. The process generated energy beyond anything humanity had ever created. Light flashed in frequencies that could not exist in normal space. Space-time itself twisted and screamed. The ships in close orbit had no chance. The nearest vessels were pulled into the collapsing mass before they could even react. Their hulls crumpled like paper. Their organic systems failed as they were crushed beyond the molecular level. Hundreds of ships vanished in seconds. Those farther out tried to flee, but the gravitational field was expanding faster than they could move. Attack craft tumbled through space, their engines fighting against forces they could not overcome. Cruisers and battle wagons found themselves pulled backward despite running their propulsion at maximum. "The neural connections are severing," Park reported. She was monitoring the communication network. "The feedback is catastrophic. Every ship connected to the Nexus is experiencing massive system failures." Carter watched the tactical display. Across the entire sector, vessels were going dark. Their perfect coordination disappeared. Ships that had moved in precise formations now drifted aimlessly or collided with each other. The swarm's hive mind had been cut away, leaving only individual organisms that did not know how to function alone. The Nexus completed its collapse. The structure that had coordinated billions of ships across hundreds of light years compressed into a singularity and then disappeared in a flash of hawking radiation. For a brief moment, a new star appeared in space. Then even that faded, leaving only empty darkness where the Nexus had been. "Secondary explosions," called out. "The nearest ships are losing structural integrity. The gravitational shockwave is tearing them apart." The Phantom continued jumping away from the disaster zone. Each quantum displacement took them farther from the epicenter of destruction. But even at this distance, Carter could see the scope of what they had done. Thousands of ships floated dead in space. Some were being pulled into decaying orbits around nearby planets. Others drifted into each other, creating secondary collisions that sent debris spinning through the void. The entire defensive sphere that had protected the Nexus was gone. "The gravitational effects are stabilizing," Hayes reported. "We are outside the danger zone." Carter allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. Against all probability, against all logic, they had destroyed the Nexus and survived. "Casualties?" he asked. "None," Park answered. "We took some stress damage to the hull, but nothing critical. All crew members reporting in. We are intact." "And the rest of the swarm?" Carter asked. Pulled up long-range sensor data. "The fleet across all sectors is in complete disarray. Ships are moving randomly or not moving at all. Their coordination is gone. They are no longer functioning as a unified force." Lieutenant Jake checked the communication channels. "I am picking up Council military transmissions. Their forces are engaging the and reporting unprecedented success. The enemy is not adapting or responding effectively." Carter sat back in his command chair. His hands were shaking with adrenaline. Around him, the crew was beginning to realize what they had accomplished. 47 people in one ship had ended a war that entire civilizations could not stop. "Set course for Council space," Carter ordered. "Let us go home." But even as he gave the order, alarms began blaring across the bridge. His console lit up with new contacts. "Captain, we have a problem," she said. "Surviving ships are changing behavior. They cannot detect us normally, but they know something attacked them. They are firing blind into the space around the former Nexus position." Carter pulled up the tactical display. Hundreds of ships were unleashing weapons in every direction. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, energy beams. They were turning the entire region into a kill zone, hopping to hit whatever had destroyed their command structure. "Can we avoid the fire?" Carter asked. Tors checked the navigation plot. "Not completely. The weapons spread is too wide. We will have to pass through at least part of the barrage." "Then we go dark again," Carter said. Minimum power, minimum signatures, and we trust our stealth systems to keep us hidden. The Phantom reduced its energy output to barely detectable levels. The ship drifted through space on momentum alone, passing through a storm of weapons fire that would have destroyed any normal vessel. Plasma bolts passed within meters. Kinetic rounds came close enough to see through the viewports. But they were firing blind, and the Phantom was invisible. The enemy could not see what they could not. The council chamber was silent when the reports started coming in. Director stood at the central platform and watched the holographic displays update in real time. Across every sector, across every front, the advance was collapsing. Confirmed reports from the system, General announced. His voice carried a note of disbelief. The forces have broken formation. They are retreating in complete disorder. Our fleet is pursuing with minimal resistance. Another report came in, then another. The pattern was the same everywhere. The swarm that had been unstoppable for months was suddenly falling apart. Ships moved without coordination. Tactical responses were slow or absent entirely. The perfect hive mind had become individual organisms that did not know how to function together. Ambassador Jake watched from the human delegation seat. He had been waiting for this moment since the Phantom departed 3 weeks ago. No communication, no updates, just waiting and hoping that Captain Carter and his crew would succeed. "What is happening out there?" Ambassador demanded. "They do not make mistakes, they do not retreat, this does not make sense." "It makes perfect sense," Jake said quietly, "if you understand what we did." Every head in the chamber turned toward him. Director gestured for Jake to approach the platform. "Ambassador, do you have information relevant to this situation?" Jake walked to the center of the chamber. 3 weeks ago, the ECS Phantom entered space with a crew of 47. Their mission was to destroy the Nexus, the central hub that coordinated the entire swarm. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. General stepped forward. "That is impossible. The Nexus was protected by thousands of ships. We sent entire fleets against it and never even got close enough to fire a shot." "You sent fleets they could see," Jake replied. "We sent a ghost." He pulled up data on the main display. Sensor readings from Council observation posts. Long-range scans of the former Nexus position. Where a massive structure had existed 3 days ago, there was now only empty space and debris fields. The Phantom approached the Nexus completely undetected, Jake explained. It positioned itself beneath the structure and deployed a gravitational collapse weapon. The Nexus was destroyed along with approximately 3,000 ships in close proximity. The neural feedback severed connections across the entire swarm. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Admiral spoke. "You are saying one human ship accomplished what our combined forces could not, that 47 people ended a war that killed billions." "Yes," Jake answered simply. Director studied the data. "The Phantom returned to Council space 2 days ago. Why were we not informed immediately?" "Because the mission was classified," a new voice said. Admiral Kate walked into the chamber. She moved with the confidence of someone who had just won an impossible victory. Behind her came Captain Ben Carter and his crew, still wearing their Phantom uniforms. Approached the platform. "Director, members of the Council, I apologize for the delay in briefing you, but we needed to confirm the mission results before making any official report." "The mission succeeded," said. "It was not a question." "Beyond our projections," confirmed. "Captain Carter, would you care to explain what you accomplished?" Carter stepped forward. He looked tired but steady. "We penetrated space using full stealth protocols. Our ship's design allowed us to pass through enemy formations completely undetected. We reached the Nexus, deployed our weapon at point-blank range, and destroyed the target. The subsequent neural feedback cascade disabled or destroyed most of the fleet in surrounding sectors." "And your casualties?" General asked. "None," Carter replied. "We suffered minor hull damage but returned with all crew members intact." The representative stood up. "This is extraordinary. Your stealth technology, your weapon, these capabilities could change everything. You must share this technology with the Council. Build more ships like the Phantom. Create an entire fleet of ghost ships." Shook her head. "That is not going to happen." "What do you mean?" demanded. "This technology could protect the entire galaxy. You cannot keep it to yourselves." "We can and we will," said firmly. The Phantom was designed for a specific purpose. It is not a weapon of mass warfare. It is a surgical tool for missions that cannot be accomplished any other way. Director raised a hand for silence. Explain, Admiral. Pulled up technical specifications on the display. The Phantom operates on principles that require absolute secrecy. Its effectiveness depends entirely on the enemy not knowing it exists. If we build a fleet of such ships, eventually one will be detected, one will be captured, one will have its technology reverse-engineered, and then the advantage disappears. So you would rather keep this capability hidden? Ambassador asked. Not hidden, corrected. Reserved for when it is truly needed. The Council has the military power to defeat the now that their coordination is broken. You do not need humanity's ghost ships for that. But someday there may be another threat. Another enemy that your conventional forces cannot stop. When that day comes, we will be ready. Jake watched the Council members process this. They were not happy about humanity keeping the Phantom technology secret, but they could not deny the logic. The ship had saved the galaxy precisely because the enemy never saw it coming. There is something else, Carter added. The Phantom was successful because we thought differently about the problem. Every species in this council tried to beat them with superior technology, bigger weapons, faster ships. We beat them by being invisible. You are saying we have been approaching warfare wrong, General asked. I am saying you forgot that warfare is not always about being stronger, Carter replied. Sometimes it is about being smarter. Sometimes it is about doing what the enemy does not expect. Humanity learned that lesson early in our history. We had to, because we were never the strongest species on our own planet. Commander Lisa Park stepped forward. Earth is a dangerous world. Our ancestors survived not by being bigger or faster or more powerful than the predators around them. They survived by being clever, by using tools, by thinking in ways that other creatures could not. And you brought that philosophy to space, said slowly. We brought it to everything we do, confirmed. The other races in this galaxy have had thousands of years to advance their technology. We have had less than a century. We cannot match your capabilities in conventional warfare, but we can find approaches that you never considered. Jake saw understanding dawn on some faces in the chamber. Humanity's place in the galaxy had just changed. They were no longer the primitive newcomers. They were the species that thought differently, that solved problems in unexpected ways. What happens now? Asked. They are broken but not destroyed. They still hold hundreds of systems. They still have millions of ships. Now the Council's forces finish what the Phantom started, said. Without the Nexus, they cannot coordinate their defense. Your fleets can engage them system by system and push them back to their home territory. It will take time, but you will win. And what will humanity do? Asked. Glanced at Carter and his crew. We will continue developing the capabilities we specialize in. The Phantom was our first ghost ship, but it will not be our last. We are already working on improvements. New stealth systems, new weapons, new approaches to problems that others think are unsolvable. You are building a fleet, said. We are building an option, corrected. The Council has conventional military power. Let us provide the unconventional capabilities. When you need something done that cannot be accomplished through direct confrontation, you call us. Considered this for a long moment. Then he nodded. The Council accepts this arrangement, but we will want regular consultations, regular updates on human military developments, no more complete secrecy. Agreed, Jake said, with the understanding that some details must remain classified for operational security. Acceptable, replied. He turned to address the full chamber. Let the record show that the war was ended through the combined efforts of the Confederated systems. Special recognition is given to Captain Ben Carter and the crew of the ECS Phantom for their extraordinary service. The council chamber erupted in applause. It was genuine, not the polite acknowledgement of diplomatic protocol. These beings understood that they had witnessed something remarkable, a turning point not just in the war, but in their understanding of what humanity could contribute to the galaxy. After the formal session ended, Jake found Carter standing alone in one of the observation decks. The captain was looking out at the stars, his expression distant. Congratulations, Jake said. You are a hero now, all of you are. Carter shook his head. We were just doing our job, following orders, trying to survive. You ended a war, Jake pointed out. That is more than just following orders. Maybe, Carter acknowledged. But I keep thinking about all the people we could not save, the planets we watched die, the refugee ships that were destroyed while we drifted past. We saved billions, but we could not save everyone. Nobody could have saved everyone, Jake said gently. You did what was possible. That is all anyone can do. Carter was quiet for a moment. Admiral told me something before we launched. She said being clever is sometimes better than being powerful. I think I understand what she meant now. The Council species spent centuries becoming powerful. They built impressive fleets and advanced weapons. But when they faced an enemy that was more powerful, they did not know what to do. And humanity? Jake asked. Humanity has always been the underdog, Carter replied. We never had the luxury of relying on raw power. We had to be clever, had to think differently, had to find ways to win that nobody expected. He turned to face Jake. That is what the Phantom represents, not just a ship, but a philosophy. When you cannot win by being stronger, win by being smarter. Jake nodded. The Council is starting to understand that. They respect us now, not because we have better technology, but because we think in ways they do not. Do you think they will call on us again? Carter asked. I am certain of it, Jake said. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There will always be threats that cannot be stopped through conventional means, and when those threats appear, they will look to humanity for solutions. Carter looked back out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Phantom and other ships like it would continue their silent missions, protecting civilizations that would never know they existed, fighting battles that would never be recorded in history. Humanity's ghost fleet watching from the shadows. They made a mistake, Carter said quietly. They assumed that because humans were new to space, we had nothing to offer. They forgot that surviving for thousands of years can make you arrogant. It can make you forget that there are different kinds of strength. And now they know better, Jake agreed. The whole galaxy knows better. 3 months later, they were pushed back to their home systems. The war was effectively over. Council forces maintained a defensive perimeter around space, but did not attempt a full invasion. There was no need. Without the Nexus, there were no longer a threat to galactic civilization. Admiral stood once again in the lunar observation deck, watching construction proceed on 3 new vessels. They were larger than the Phantom, more sophisticated, equipped with even more advanced stealth systems. The silent fleet was growing. Captain Carter had been promoted and given command of the entire program. His crew had become trainers, passing on their experience to new generations of stealth ship operators. They taught cadets not just about technology, but about philosophy, about thinking differently, about finding solutions that others never imagined. And across the galaxy, a new understanding emerged. Humanity might be young, they might lack the centuries of advancement that other species possessed, but they brought something else to the table. They brought fresh perspectives. They brought unconventional thinking. They brought the willingness to try approaches that ancient civilizations had forgotten or never considered. The Council chamber now included a human representative on the Security Council, not because Earth had the biggest fleet or the most advanced weapons, but because humanity had proven they could solve problems that others could not. And sometimes, late at night, when threats emerged that required unusual solutions, a message would be sent to Earth, a request for the silent fleet to deploy. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ships that could not be seen would begin their mission. They had learned to fear the silence. Other enemies would learn the same lesson, because humanity had discovered something that many advanced civilizations had forgotten. The most dangerous opponents are not always the ones you can see. Sometimes they are the shadows you never noticed, the whispers you never heard, the ghosts that strike without warning. And in those shadows, in those whispers, in those ghost ships drifting through the void, humanity found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as warriors, but as guardians who protected the galaxy from threats it could not face alone. The silent fleet grew, the missions continued, and the galaxy slept peacefully, never knowing how many times they had been saved by enemies they never saw coming. Detect, their weapons missed, again and again, never knowing how close they came to their target. After an hour that felt like days, the Phantom emerged from the kill zone. The fleet fell behind them, still firing randomly into empty space, still searching for an enemy they would never find. Carter looked at his crew. They were exhausted, running on adrenaline and training, but they were alive, and they had won. "Take us home," he said quietly. "We have done enough." The Phantom positioned itself beneath the Nexus defensive sphere and waited. Carter watched the ships patrol overhead, each one capable of destroying his vessel with a single shot. But they did not fire, did not even look down, because they could not see what was coming, could not imagine that something so small and quiet could threaten something so massive and powerful. "All stations prepare for final approach," Carter said. "This is what we came here to do. Let us finish it." The Phantom began its final drift toward the Nexus, a ghost moving through a forest of giants, unseen and unheard, carrying death in its shadow. "I know you will, Captain," returned the salute. "Good hunting." 6 hours later, the Phantom detached from its moorings. The ship drifted out of the lunar construction bay during a scheduled meteor shower, just another piece of debris moving through space. No ceremony marked its departure. No crowds gathered to watch it leave. No one transmitted wishes of good luck or safe journey. The Phantom simply vanished into the darkness between Earth and the stars, carrying 47 souls into the most dangerous region of known space. Admiral watched from the observation deck until even she could no longer see the ship against the black. Then she turned away and began the hardest part of any military operation, waiting to learn if her people would come home. Admiral, tell her the Council wants to see this ghost ship of yours." Jake activated his communicator. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. Everything depended on what happened next. If the Phantom could do what Admiral claimed, they might save the galaxy. If it failed, they would continue their advance until nothing was left. He sent the message to Earth with just 2 words: Ghost Protocol.